Is weird, odd, strange, or just plain bizarre is really your cup of tea? Then the Golden State Media Concepts Weird News Podcast will give you that fix. Can't believe it? Well, listen for yourself as we deliver the strangest news you definitely won't find on CNN or Fox. It's the Golden State Media Concepts Weird News Podcast.
Thank you for tuning in to the GSMC Weird News Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. I'm your host, Mark Swan, and I hope you are having a weird and wonderful week. I know I am. A lady hit me up on Facebook with the same first and last name as my mom. She tried to act like my mom. She wasn't my mom. The picture of the woman was someone with blonde hair. My mom's a brunette. And this woman tried to ask me questions like she was my mom. And ultimately, when I asked her, hey, what do you want? She tried to sell me insurance. So my real mom went on Facebook and she was not having a good time because apparently this imposter mom was going towards all my mom's contacts and asking for their information, trying to sell them Facebook. And my mom asked if she was hacked, and bless her soul, she's not, but there's someone here trying to impersonate her very poorly. Probably just some dude in a basement. Hey man, if you're listening, if by chance you're just the type of person to try to scam people on Facebook and you love weird news, leave my mom alone. Leave everybody alone. Just get a real job. I don't know what to tell you. You want to host a podcast? I bet I could get you a contact. I don't know. But my mom's okay. Everybody's okay. Nobody fell for it. This lady did not look like my mom. But positive note for this week, I am happy to report that I got my first vaccination of 2. I'm very excited. If anybody out there hasn't gotten one yet and they're having anxieties, I will say this: it wasn't so bad. It was actually sort of pleasant. It was one of the better shots I've ever gotten, and I really don't like people putting needles in my arm. It tends to be one of my phobias. I'm a big medical horror guy, and I'm always kind of afraid of something going wrong with that. But the nurse is very nice, very tired. Shout out to our nurses who are doing this. They're working tirelessly. She was really friendly. She did it in no time. It was relatively painless. She told me to sit down for 15 minutes if there were any sort of allergies or anything like that. I was totally fine. I went home. I haven't really been feeling it. My arm's a little sore and I'm a little tired, but otherwise I'm not having a whole lot of symptoms. One symptom I am having is when I go to sleep, I have dreams about Bill Gates, and he keeps trying to give me Groupon codes. And I keep accepting them, but then they don't work. He also seems to be really interested in my YouTube playlists. I don't know. Bill, since you're living in my arm right now, could you please maybe send me some Microsoft stock? Maybe stop with the weird dreams. Anyway, speaking of dreams, I am so excited to share today's show with you, my dear listeners. Today, we are talking about last week's Josh fight. Did you hear about this? This is super cool. One of the coolest stories of 2021, I think. I've got biblically accurate angels for you. I am stoked to go over the abundance of dinosaur news we've had this month. And to top it all off, we're heading off to social media for the weirdest dreams you have ever had. So, without further ado, let's get right into it. Memes. They engulf our lives. They take up 40% of our screen time. We share them, we laugh at them, and then we let them die forever, only to be replaced by the next weird and wonderful thing. But every once in a while, a meme sticks out and does some good for the world. Flashback to last April, a man named Josh Swain from Tucson, Arizona, decided to have a little fun with some strangers. What Josh did was look up other people with the same name as him, Josh Swain, on Facebook, and decided to start a slightly nefarious messenger group chat. For the sake of dramatics, okay, listeners at home, I want you to put some dramatic strings in your head, violins, bass, maybe some timpanis, while I read this now infamous conversation verbatim. And before I start, you can find this image online really easy if you just search up Josh Fight. It's the screenshot of the original text conversation. And my favorite part about it is that it is a group chat, and it has all of the recipients, and it just says Josh, 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 et cetera, et cetera. So the chat starts this way. From the original Josh Swain, he says, "You're probably wondering why I've gathered you all here today." A second Josh, perhaps a Josh Swain, I'm assuming a Josh Swain. If I gathered this correctly, they're all named Josh Swain. This second Josh goes, "Because we all share the same names, ... In response to this, another Josh Swain leaves the Facebook group. Apparently he can't take a joke. Josh, you're a coward. I don't know. The original Josh Swain says, "Precisely. April 24th, 2021, 12 p.m. Meet at these coordinates." And then he gives a very detailed XY nautical coordinates. "We fight. Whoever wins gets to keep the name. Everyone else has to change their name. You have a year to prepare. Good luck." That's it. The challenging Josh Swain posted a screenshot onto Twitter the next day, as a cute joke. He was bored during quarantine. He craved human interaction. I'm sure we can all relate to those feelings last year. According to Wikipedia, he claims he was also frustrated with being unable to get good handles and screen names due to him sharing the same name with so many other Josh Swains in the world. I know how that feels. That is really frustrating. I have such a basic name. It's basically one of the most common names in the world, and then a bird. Mark Swan. There are so many Mark Swans out there, and they're all doing cool things. There's a famous animator named Mark Swan. That sucks for me because I want to be an animator. So what, I got to change my name? I like my name. I wonder if there's another Mark Swan podcast host out there. If there is, and you're listening, Mark Swan, 1 year from now, you and I battle for the Mark Swan podcast host supremacy. Anyway, Josh was surprised to find that his tweet received 64,000 likes and 21,000 retweets within 2 weeks. Crazy. With all the attention, Josh did insist that the chat was a joke, and if this was a normal time in a normal world, this would probably be the end of the story. However, we do not live in a normal world. We live in a weird world, and you love it. That's why you're listening. And Josh decided to do some actual good with his newfound meme. Nearly a year later, that's last week from the recording of this podcast, the challenging Josh Swain went to Reddit to announce the Josh Fight. And I put Josh Fight in capital letters. I just want to tell you that's what it means, how much to me what this is. The Josh Fight was, in fact, happening. It was going to be a real battle royale for the sole winner of the Josh Swain name. The event was open to guests, and it was originally going to take place at the coordinates that Josh provided in his original challenge. Mr. Swain says that he chose the battleground in Lincoln, Nebraska, as it is a centralized location in the U.S. for all attendees and defending Joshes to easily meet. And I will say this, Nebraska is right in the middle of the country, and it is a lot of big open space, but I would never willingly invite someone to Lincoln, Nebraska. Sorry, Nebraska listeners. Love you. You guys are great. And for the most part, your state is great. I love the zoo. I love Omaha. But lots of open fields, lots of flat road. It's not a great state to drive through. Please submit all complaints to social media. Anyway, unfortunately, the exact coordinates were on a private land, and the owner did not agree to hold the Josh Fight there presently. To you, sir or madam, I say, live a little. Have a little levity in your life. Let something as awesome as the Josh Fight happen on your land. What's the problem? So the battleground was moved to Air Park in Lincoln. I've never been to Air Park. I have been all over Nebraska. Never been to Air Park, but I imagine it's great. Now, the coolest thing about this absurd event was Josh had planned the whole battle royale as a fundraiser for the Children's Hospital and Medical Center in Omaha, Nebraska. He also encouraged attendees to bring canned goods for the food bank of Lincoln. So there's some actual good coming out of this other than watching a bunch of guys named Josh beat the tar out of each other. And you may be asking yourself, did a bunch of guys named Josh really agree to meet in a park in Nebraska and beat the tar out of each other? The answer may or may not disappoint you, as the challenging Josh Swain told all invited Joshes and other attendees to bring pool noodles for a pool noodle fight. On one hand, There is the crazy side of my brain that wants to see 10 Joshes meet in a circle and just fight Mad Max style. But of course, that's barbaric. We don't need any more violence at this time in 2021. Not to mention the legality, not to mention just the real unpleasantness of it. This isn't a movie. However, I did just think that it would be really cool to have like a Paul Rudd style Josh fight movie. I hope this inspires something like that. But I am glad that this became a safe event that was relatively non-violent, really just for fun. That's cool. I'm a peaceful person. The big event took place last Saturday on April 24th, and I dare say it was one of the biggest, most hype events of 2021 so far. And you'll be surprised when I tell you this. Nearly 1,000 came in attendance to watch the Josh fight. I can't tell you in earnest if something like this blew up due to an entire year of quarantine restrictions, but this event was one of the craziest, most positive things I've seen in a long time. It was really cool to see all of the smiling faces and the cheering. It was a good indicator that maybe things are starting to go back to normal. Unfortunately, I was unable to attend, but there were several live streams of the event happening with thousands of people watching all over the world, and that is really, really cool. So, you may ask, who won the Josh fight? And there were technically 3 fights. The first was the main event between the challenging Josh Swain and only one other defending Josh Swain. It's sad to say, but only one other of the original Joshes showed up to the fight for the name. To the Joshes who didn't show up, I show my utmost disappointment. The 2 Joshes met in the center of the event to have a one-off rock, paper, scissors to claim the name for good. And guess what? The challenging Josh Swain, the man who set up this whole crazy event, ended up winning in the end. Congratulations to you, Josh Swain, on your well-deserved name claim. The second fight of the day was a pool noodle brawl between any person named Josh. If you're wondering who won out on this one, I'm happy to report that Josh won the bout while the other Joshes lost. In all seriousness, though, the second Josh to win the day was a 4-year-old named Joshua Vincent Jr. Congratulations to you, little Josh. I'm sure that you've done your Papa Josh proud. Josh is all around. The third fight, another pool noodle battle, was a free-for-all between all attendees. I don't really know who won that one, but I hope it was a Josh. All in all, it's cool to see something like this happen in 2021. Before we conclude, though, I do have to address the elephant in the room. Watching the live streams, a lot of people were practicing social distancing, but it was still an event in modern times with thousands in attendance, and there was for sure to be some anxiety involved. It's a weird thing to see in this time, in this day and age, just to see that many people packed together. I saw a lot of people wearing masks. That's cool, but, it is what it is with these things. That being said, it was really great to see something so wholesome like this in the early half of the year. Last year was so sheltered, so unsure, and really just lacking positivity. We're heading towards normalcy, hopefully. And I'm quite thankful that we had something like a Josh fight to herald in a fun community for a great cause. And of course, my favorite part about this was just the absolute overly positive response. I mean, first of all, this thing blew up, but then it lasted the year. We've had memes and memes and memes and memes and memes about it. I love it. I really, really, really hope that we have some sort of comedy that spawned from this. Like, once again, I don't know why I'm thinking about Paul Rudd so much right now, but I'm thinking Paul Rudd is Josh. Andy Samberg is Josh. We could have, who else? Kate McKinnon is Josh. And we could have... Who would play Little Josh? I'm thinking Finn Wolfhard, since he plays every little boy ever. But Finn Wolfhard's getting kind of old. So maybe he can play like a teenager Josh. Like a rebel Josh. Who doesn't want to be Josh. But he joins the fight to reclaim his dad's lost Josh honor. I may be overthinking too much on this. Well, all in all, I'm really happy to see something in this modern time, like a stupid meme, just some guy's weird declaration out of boredom, turn into a charity event. I basically always parade and laud charity events, and I always parade and laud memes. My partner and I are sending memes to each other all the time. So, you are listening to the GSMC Weird News podcast. Feel free to hit us up on social media. Look me up on Twitter and Facebook and Instagram, and really anywhere that there's podcasts. And be sure to comment with your thoughts on the Josh fight. You can find us at GSMC Weird News. And by the way, look up other GSMC news and other topics podcasts. We have dozens upon dozens for any topic that you can think of. I am so excited to share this with you because I very recently found the network and I'm so happy to be a part of it. And I'm excited to basically fill up my day with all of these topics that I'm interested in. But please find us on social media, leave your comments, tell us about the Josh fight. After the break, we are transcending the meme-verse. We're going into a new weird set of memes. This is something I actually very recently discovered on Facebook. But we're talking to you about the horrific world of biblically accurate angels. And at the end of the show, we're going through some of the weirdest dreams I've ever had, some of the weirdest dreams you've ever had, some of the weirdest dreams that people on Facebook and other social media have ever had. And here's the thing. After I go through this, I still want to hear your weird dreams. So hit me up. Anyway, I'm Mark Swan, and this is the GSMC Weird News Podcast. We'll be back after the break.
Are you tired of the same old news? Are you sick of the seemingly endless political spin and negativity? The GSMC America Still Beautiful podcast is a weekly news podcast covering all the top positive and uplifting news stories. We cover stories that will inspire, uplift, and remind you of the good in the world. Tune into the Golden State Media Concepts America Still Beautiful podcast to get all the great and positive news stories of today. Download the GSMC America Still Beautiful podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, Google Play, or anywhere you find podcasts. Just type GSMC in the search bar.
Welcome back to the GSMC Weird News Podcast. I am your humble host, Mark Swan. We just got done walking through the world-famous Josh fight. And I want to know, were you cheering for Josh? Or did you want Josh to be the victor? Or maybe you were cheering for the underdog, Josh. Sorry, I'm just really stoked on the Josh fight. I am probably going to be making Josh jokes all day long and probably a couple more times throughout this podcast. It is just such a cool story for me. I cannot think of a better way to start the year. And I'm saying start the year. We're in April. What's going on? Time is moving faster and faster. Regardless, I'm really stoked on the idea of something starting on social media and it blowing up in such a positive way. And speaking of social media, be sure to stick around until the end of the show where I asked the internet, what was your weirdest dream? And dear listener, I ask you, what is your weirdest dream? I want you to think about it as we go through the rest of the podcast, and I want you to hit me up on social media. Please, once again, find me on Twitter, find me on Instagram. Let me know. I am so willing to have a conversation with this. I am such a big dream guy. I had a weird dream this morning, actually, about waking up in my childhood bed, and my legs were too long, and I didn't know what to do about it. And I wondered to myself, why is my brain thinking up these things? Regardless, we'll get into it at the end of the show. But in the meantime, I want to come to you and say, be not afraid, because we are getting into our next weird topic. Real quick, before you think about your dreams, do me a favor, close your eyes. We're going to do a meditative experience together. Close your eyes and imagine an angel. Chimes. Bells. Yes, think of an angel. It doesn't matter if you're religious or not. Just give yourself a moment, clear your mind, and think about the image of an angel. I want to look into your mind, and I'm taking a guess that you're probably imagining a person in robes with wings. Wings, maybe white wings, maybe black wings, maybe wings of many colors. This person probably has fair skin. They probably have a halo, whatever that is. I still really don't understand what a halo is supposed to be. But perhaps just like a gold ring of light around their heads. Perhaps they're engulfed in light already. Maybe they're playing a harp, bare feet. They're sitting on a cloud. They're really, really happy. They're very wholesome. Maybe your thoughts are skewed by certain pop culture recently, like the very recent Amazon series Good Omens, which is an adaptation of a book. And I know I'm just pandering at this point, but please watch that series. That series is so rad. And then if you've watched it, please read the book. The book and the series are rad. Regardless, think of an angel. And maybe, if you're real classical, you're thinking of a fat, winged baby, like a Cupid. I don't know. Regardless of your imagination, it is quite possible that your depiction of angels is skewed by modern and Renaissance depictions of the holy creatures. Artists like Michelangelo and some of the other Ninja Turtles like to depict angels as beautiful, human-like beings that represent the grace and glory of heaven. However, many biblical scholars are quick to point out that, according to ancient holy texts, angels took on a more bizarre and unlikely form. According to historyofyesterday.com, a 12th century Jewish scholar named Maimonides, and please excuse me if I butchered the name, Hebrew scholars, I've never been great with Latin or Hebrew. Maimonides actually categorized angels into 4 types, and their descriptions of their appearances might surprise you. Getting right into it, the first type of angel, and this is the lowest ranked angel, apparently they come in ranks, the first type of angel is the cherubim, or the cherub. And yes, you may recognize that name for the aforementioned fat babies with wings. However, the Bible describes the cherubim as creatures with both animal and human features. And that's a bit of a vague description, but from my understanding, it might be a person with a wolf's body, but a human's head, or a person with a human's body and a wolf's head, or it may be a person with like stork's ribs and lizard's arms and a giraffe's head. It seems to be a real like mishmash of biology, and you would not be wrong in being horrified by such a thing. And you might not be wrong in thinking, Mark, why are you always talking about furries? Because I always seem to find topics that talk about furries, because that's what comes to mind is half animals, half humans. That's a furry, and these angels are furries. Anyway, there is a book in the Old Testament called the Book of Ezekiel. It describes the cherubim a bit differently, and it says that they have 4 faces, that of a lion, of an ox, of an eagle, and of a human. So that's a 4-headed creature. Cool. They have straight legs. I don't know what that means. 4 wings, and bull hooves for feet that gleam like polished brass. One set of wings covers their body, I guess like a blanket or clothing or something, and the other is used for flight. That is nightmare fuel. That's lo and behold, that is the one thing that I could describe that as. Going on about dreams, going on about angels, that's something that shows up in your nightmares to tell you that your dad is a werewolf. I don't even know, but that's such a scary thing to think about. So why do we know cherubs as the cute Cupid-like things in today's mythology? And the answer is fairly obvious. It's probably explicitly Cupid's fault. As the Abrahamic religions, that's the Christian and Jewish and Muslim faiths, spread throughout the world, their stories mixed with the mythologies of other people. And some of the angelic descriptions got mixed together with depictions of beings from other cultures. Specifically, the Roman and Greek god Cupid somehow influenced our modern idea of the cherubim angel. I would once again blame Michelangelo, and if you are an art student out there and you don't like that answer, feel free to at me. I'm just spitting hot takes here. I just assume that there was some people in Italy who wanted prettier versions of angels in their artwork, carrying Joan of Arc or Marie Antoinette or whomever, and so they thought that pretty cute babies with wings holding wineskins and ham and stuff would be better than things with 4 heads: lion, ox, boar, human, giraffe, alligator, tapir. Probably wouldn't work in depictions of beauty. Moving on. The next type of angel on Maimonides' list is the Malachim. The Malachim were messengers of God and would often come to people with holy messages and instructions to spread the word of heaven. This is probably the most common type of angel that you may be familiar with. These are the angels that would come to people in biblical stories or other mythological stories with just sort of like the, hey, you're special, do something about it. And they actually did assume the form of a human appearance in biblical stories. However, ironically, there is no mention of these types of angels having wings. So what's with that? The first depiction of angels as humans with wings didn't appear in art until the 4th century. And I'm just going off on conjecture here, but it's around that time that we really understood that flight was because of the aerodynamics of wings. Once again, art and physics students at me if I'm wrong here, but I feel as though we probably gave angels wings in art as to make them able to fly in the sky and therefore higher than us. I don't know. It's all just conjecture. I'm not an expert, but that's just what I think. The third type of angel you may have heard of before is the majestic seraphim, or the seraph. These angels were tasked with flying around God's throne up in heaven and singing endlessly. For some reason. That sounds like a pretty cool job, if you ask me. It's just flying around the big man, flying around the boss, the CEO, and just singing. I don't know. I'm a pretty good singer. You can look it up. I don't know. So just sing around for eternity around God's throne sounds like a pretty good gig. These guys are described as having 6 wings, 2 of which are for flying. What are the other 4 for? I don't super get that, but whatever. While they use the rest to cover their heads and feet. Oh, you just had to read the next sentence. These guys are described as having 6 wings, 2 of which are for flying, while they use the rest to cover their heads and feet. There seems to be a theme here of like they have enough wings to not only fly, but also like cover up their modesty. I don't know. Angels just fly a little free. It's a modern world. I don't know. Scholars suggest that this odd appearance evokes a cobra-like image and was most likely inspired by the imagery of Egyptian art, as the word seraph may mean venomous snake in Hebrew. I personally know the word seraph from doing assignments for school. A lot of times my teachers would tell me not to use serif fonts, and they meant the fonts with the decorative little flourishes on the letters, like the lines. Like it sort of makes the lines look a little bit more official. And what? Oh, my producer is telling me that this is a different kind of serif. Like serif, S-E-R-I-F versus S-E-R-A-P-H. It's a joke. Sorry, that's some font humor for you. Here on the GSMC Weird News podcast, we have peak font humor. I really like to bring out the weird news, but I also like to bring in listeners for my font humor. So if you are way into font humor, join us on the GSMC Weird News podcast, where we have peak font humor. Anyway, moving on. The final type of angel is the highest ranked in the hierarchy of heaven, and it is known as the Ophanim. Once again, I do apologize if I said this wrong. Going back to the book of Ezekiel, my man, Eazy-E, describes the Ophanim, or the wheels, quote-unquote, as beings made of interlocking gold wheels, with each wheel's exterior covered with multiple eyes. Spooky. They move by floating themselves in the sky. I resonate with this one, and I'm going to go off on a personal tangent, because when I was in 5th grade, I'm once again not a religious man, but when I was a kid, I had a religious kid come up to me and say, "Hey, so you know that UFOs were proven in the Bible, right?" And I said, "What?" And he went on to tell me about this story of Ezekiel and about how Ezekiel looked into the sky and that there was a flaming wheel flying throughout the sky and it had many eyes, and how like a lot of modern people, a lot of modern Bible studiers think that this is possibly a depiction of a UFO. And me, being an impressionable young 5th grader, was like, yeah, sold. You convinced me. I'm into this. And I'm sure if you're one of those people who watch like Ancient Aliens on the History Channel or any of those like alien shows, you know exactly what I'm talking about. This is one of the most famous ancient UFO alien stories. And Actually, former NASA employee Joseph F. Blumrich suggests that Ezekiel may have been witness to one of the earliest recording sightings of a UFO. Now, keep in mind that Mr. Blumrich has a lot of critics, and they actually pin him as somewhat of a conspiracy theorist, which, if you're talking aliens and UFOs, it's most likely that you are also sort of a subscriber to conspiracies. And no shade on my part. I'm a big fan of alien talk and I'm a big fan of conspiracy talk. But being a former NASA employee probably means you're a smart guy and you have a lot of thoughts on the subject. So it's always something to listen to. However, there's probably a far more logical answer as to why Ezekiel had some interesting depictions for his angels, and it's kind of obvious. Ezekiel was on something. Look, we're a PG podcast here, and I don't really want to get into it, but I would not be surprised that old Zeke was eating something with mold on it, or drinking some wine that was fermented in the wrong way, and my man just started hallucinating. You may or may not have been there. Maybe you found some mushrooms in the desert. Who knows? Maybe he had a genuine religious experience. I guess we'll never know for sure. Regardless, the reason why we're talking biblically accurate angels today is because the topic has become somewhat of a cultural phenomenon in the past few months. Lots of people are just now discovering that angels weren't always pretty people with wings, and that they actually had far more horrifying depictions. In fact, the 4 types I described are just a small sample of classically described angels. There's so many depictions of these creatures being abominations with millions of wings, heads and eyes popping out. It is a truly bizarre deep dive to look into the psychedelic descriptions for these things. There are a ton of social media campaigns, Facebook groups, Reddit threads, and subreddits, and they are all dedicated to displaying these weird, accurate angels. And I encourage you to check some of them out. And then send your favorites to me on social media, because this is one of my favorite topics. I hate to say it, but it is. All right, after the break, I am going over 3 exciting dinosaur stories for all of our Jurassic fans out there. And after that, I'm heading out to social media to read some of your weirdest dreams. This is the GSMC podcast. I'm Mark Swan, and I'll see you again soon.
Tired of searching the vast jungle of podcasts? Now listen close and hear this out. There's a podcast network that covers just about everything that you've been searching. Hey! The Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network is here. Nothing less than a podcast bliss with endless hours of podcast coverage. From news, sports, music, fashion, cooking, entertainment, fantasy, football, and so much more. So stop lurking around and go straight out to the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. Guaranteed to fill that podcast itch. Whatever it may be. Visit us at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Follow us on Facebook and Twitter, and download us on iTunes, SoundCloud, and Google Play.
Welcome back to the GSMC Weird News Podcast. I am your lowly and appreciative host, Mark Swan. We've had a wild ride today. We battled our way through a cavalcade of Joshes. We went to the psychedelic realm of biblically accurate angels. Now, we are traveling back in time. Come with me, if you will. If you're like me, one of those infamous 90s kids, you grew up obsessed, and I mean obsessed, with dinosaurs. I think I was 6 years old when Jurassic Park came out, and I already liked dinosaurs. I mean, I loved dinosaurs. If we're going on the Mark mythology, if you're updating the Mark Swan wiki, I would suck at Jeopardy, but I would always get the dinosaur questions right. Anyway, Jurassic Park, that movie totally blew my mind. Like many other kids, I was so happy to see a lifelike Tyrannosaurus Rex, even if it did scare me a little, and honestly, it does scare me a little to this day. I don't think I'm wrong in saying that the movie did a lot to inspire kids to get into paleontology and archaeology, and we have had so many discoveries about prehistoric life ever since. Coincidentally, this past week has been a big one for dinosaurs, and Josh's for that matter, but I digress, and has specifically been an incredible week for the famous T-Rex. Our first story takes us to UC Berkeley in California. That's the University of California, Berkeley, where paleontologist Charles Marshall has proposed that on the North American continent, during the Cretaceous period, around 20,000 T-Rexes lived and roamed at any given moment. Furthermore, the study suggests that means that throughout the giant reptile's reign as king of the beasts, over 2.5 billion T-Rexes lived and died before their extinction. Marshall used a great amount of data from the T-Rex's fossil record, accounting for factors such as the average weight and size, the theorized sexual maturity, and the assumed diet of the terrible lizard. Many factors regarding the creature's proposed biology were studied, as well as the number of T-Rex fossils found throughout the world. The data was processed through a computer simulation, where Marshall and his team came up with the ballpark number of 20,000 T-Rexes living on the continent at one time. Of course, there are a lot of guesses going on with this data, and it's impossible to give definitive facts on an animal that lived millions and millions of years ago. Still, going back to Jurassic Park, one T-Rex was enough to cause an awful lot of trouble for we squishy humans. And the thought of 20,000 T-Rexes roaming the American country is enough to make me glad that they are long extinct. But hey, if you're afraid of being chased down and eaten by one of history's biggest apex predators, fear not. A study from the Free University of Amsterdam suggests that you wouldn't even have to outrun a chasing T-Rex. In fact, you could probably outwalk it. Pasha Van Billiard, a master's candidate at the Free University, and his team recently released a new study on the walking speed of the T-Rex, with some interesting new findings. Previous studies suggested that the 40-foot-long, 6-ton monster, that's 3 pickup trucks, had a traveling speed between 4.5 to 7 miles per hour, which is like a light jog for you and I. However, these previous studies were only accounting for the T-Rex's strength in its legs and hips, which was studying its bone density as well as its proposed musculature. Van Billiard and his team conducted a new study that focused on the T-Rex's use of its tail. Apparently, the dinosaur's massive, rigid tail was instrumental in keeping it perfectly balanced as it stalked forward and worked with the ligaments of its leg muscles to properly shift its weight around while it walked. The type of tail movement used by the T-Rex is actually not present in any animal that exists today. I didn't know that. To the T-Rex's detriment, this unique tail balance actually hindered its movement speed, according to the study. The data proposed by Van Billiard was put into a simulation of the creature's movement, and the study concluded that the T-Rex more likely had a walking speed of 3 miles per hour, which is about the average walking speed of a human. So, if you find yourself hiking the American plains and you come face to face with the undisputed king of the dinosaurs, just know that you can probably jog to safety. Our next dinosaur story for today comes from the weird news capital of the world. Drumroll please, Florida. Christina Ryan, a Florida woman, claims that she has caught a dinosaur running by on her house's security camera. The Florida resident says that, after reviewing her security footage, that a strange creature can be seen bounding by at 3:40 in the morning. The footage is in black and white and is blurry, but Ryan, after taking the footage to social media, swears that the creature in the video is a dinosaur. Now, I have watched the footage, and I can say with my expert certainty that the animal in question is not a dinosaur. It's like a fox or something. But I can see where Christina gets the notion. The animal sort of bounds forward, and it looks like it's walking on 2 legs, and it has a long tail. But there are 100 other more plausible things that this could be. Some people are saying it's just a big bird or a dog. Christina, however, is adamant that she has caught something stranger on camera, And who are we to judge? Well, we're the internet. We can judge however we want. I mean, if dinosaurs were to reappear anywhere in America, it would probably be Florida. Heck, they basically already have dinosaurs there. Alligators and crocodiles have gone relatively unchanged since prehistoric times. The footage is easy to find online, but I will post the video to our social media and you can see for yourself. I wanted to end today's segment with just some general weird dinosaur facts. I love dinosaurs, and I assume that a lot of our listeners do so as well. So I went to Reddit and found a thread called "What's a Cool Fact About Dinosaurs That You Know?" This is a relatively recent thread, and I found some cool stuff. I'm just going to go down the list. The first comment says, scientists have studied the nasal and throat structure of the Tyrannosaurus rex, which is our boy who we're studying today, and as it turns out, it was completely incapable of vocalizing a roar like those seen in movies. Rather, they would have made a deep growling noise similar to alligators. This one I totally believe. As far as I understand it, being somewhat of a film buff myself, I understand that the way that they made the Tyrannosaurus Rex noise in the Jurassic Park movies was to slow down and maybe reverse a lion's roar. Please correct me in the comments or on social media if I got that wrong, but I'm pretty sure that's how they did that. So if you've ever been to a place like Florida or any of the southern U.S. or any place that would have a crocodile or alligator, listening to them is a pretty creepy experience, and I absolutely understand that a T-Rex would sound like a crocodile. Going down the list, raptors couldn't walk with their hands hanging palm down like most toys and movies show. Their bone structure wouldn't allow it. They had to keep their palms facing each other. That's adorable. I like to imagine the raptor just sort of very nervously holding his hands together. I really, really like this next fact. Cartoonist Gary Larson of The Far Side named a dinosaur part. In one of his strips, a caveman scientist described the spikes on a stegosaurus tail as the Thagomizer, named after the late Thag Simmons. It's a funny comic. If you are a young person and you haven't experienced The Far Side, I very absolutely recommend it. It is such a cool comic, and you will have a couple of laughs. Real-life paleontologists realized this part had no name, referring to the end of the stegosaurus's tail, so they started calling it the Thagomizer. Very cool. Congratulations to you, Gary Larson. I'm glad you had an effect on some actual science. This next fact says, recently, Spinosaurus was discovered to have a tadpole-like tail. It has been known for a while that it was mostly an aquatic animal. Even Jurassic Park 3 showed that, but it was always depicted with the standard lizard-like dinosaur tail. Recently, new fossils have emerged that show that the creature had a tail like that of a tadpole, suggesting that it spent much more time in the water than previously thought. I love that. There's actually a lot of studies out there that say that the Spinosaurus was more dangerous than the T-Rex, our bad boy and subject of today's podcast. The Spinosaurus had sharper teeth, it had a more predatory instinct, it was faster, and it also could move on land and in the water, according to studies on its bone structure. So that's pretty cool. This next one is super interesting. It says, there was a study done a few years ago where scientists grew chicken embryos that had dinosaur faces, a rounded snout, and teeth instead of a beak. They did this by altering gene expression in the developing embryos, so the snouts came out looking more like an alligator's than a traditional bird's. Also, birds actually existed at the same time as non-avian dinosaurs. Archaeopteryx was a Jurassic dinosaur, so the evolution of birds began long before velociraptors and T-Rex were walking the earth. For clarification, they may not have been true birds as we know them today, but the avian dinosaurs branched off from non-avian dinosaurs well before the extinction event that killed off non-avian dinosaurs and continued their evolution into what we know as modern birds. For those of you who are not aware, the dinosaurs' most recent ancestors are a lot of our modern birds, and just as an example, if you want to go out in real life, find a park, find a group of geese and just tick them off, they will most absolutely act like dinosaurs towards you. They are mean creatures, and a lot of people don't really understand that something like a chicken has a lot in common with the T-Rex genealogically than we are to first assume. This next fact is a scary one. They were around for longer than they've been extinct, which means that there were dinosaur fossils when dinosaurs existed. Kind of weird to think about. We as humans always assume that we have been around the longest and that the dinosaurs were some sort of creature that we have a little bit of data on, but otherwise they were not really the creatures that were in charge of the earth for so long. Not so. They were in charge of the earth for longer than we were. This next fact from Reddit said, there is a dinosaur named Yi Qi from the limestone deposits in China that has the exact same body plan as a wyvern dragon, complete with bat-like wings, and proves that flight evolved more than once in dinosaurs. I love this fact. I'm sort of a big guy about, why does every culture believe in dragons, but we don't seem to have evidence of dragons? And this is sort of one of the answers here, is that we do have evidence of dragons. It was just that ancient stone diggers were finding bones of this particular type of dinosaur and making stories based upon it. I'm such a big guy for why are there medieval dragons? Why are there Chinese mythology dragons? Why are there Greek dragons? Why are there dragons all over the place? But we don't seem to have any sort of real proof of dragons. So I really, really, really like this fact. Honestly, I could go on and on about dinosaurs. It is one of my favorite subjects. What happened to them, really? We don't actually know. We have a lot of really strong theories, but we don't know for sure because we weren't there, and there's a lot of evidence pointing in every direction. Were they killed by a meteor? Were they killed by a supervolcano? I suppose we'll never know unless the science gets really, really, really good. Now, if you are someone who loves dinosaurs like me, whether you're older, whether you're younger, whether you're my age, whether Jurassic Park had a huge impact on you, or whether you just kind of like the idea of huge lizards and bird-like creatures roaming the earth instead of us yucky, stinky humans, go ahead and find us on social media, where you can leave a comment with me or any of our other wonderful GSMC podcast hosts about your favorite dinosaur. Now, we have other great podcasts that tackle topics like this. We have science podcasts, we have technology podcasts, we have medical podcasts. But I'm so thankful that you have joined me today on the GSMC Weird News podcast. I really, really encourage you to reach out with your favorite dinosaur to me on our social media, and otherwise, please just look us up. Look up some of our other podcasts. It is such a treat to be a host for such awesome topics for you today. And we're about to wrap up the show, but not before talking about some of your weird dreams. I went to social media. I hit up some of my contacts. I talked to some friends. I talked to some strangers. And I'm going through some of our weirdest dreams that we've ever had. And that's after the break. Thank you so much for listening. This is GSMC Weird News.
The GSMC Life and Happiness podcast takes you on a journey of exploration. We'll discuss tried and true methods alongside the latest trends of how to best live your life to its fullest and happiest. From psychology to meditation, science to self-help books, the GSMC Life and Happiness podcast will help you to discover what makes you happy and how you can live life being the best you possible. Download the GSMC Life and Happiness podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, Google Play, or anywhere you find podcasts. Just type GSMC in the search bar.
Hello and welcome back, my most esteemed listeners. This is the GSMC Weird News Radio. I hope you've had a wonderful, weird time with me today. We fought off an onslaught of Joshes. We stared into the many eyes of the biblically accurate angels, and we outjogged a T-Rex together. Now, it's time to lay our heads down and travel to the world of dreams. I went to sleep thinking of content for this week's episode the other night, and I had one of the strangest dreams in a long time. I was going to a different high school than the one I went to. I'm 35, by the way, so I shouldn't be going to high school. Anyway, in English class, our teacher put on a documentary about how America was founded by wizards who ate each other. Like, they cut and devoured each other. It was disturbing. I don't have another word for it. Then, later, in photography class, I found a puddle with a cat submerged in it. And it's hard to describe this. Like, he was underneath the water. He wasn't having a bad time, but his face was upwards towards the surface of the puddle, but he was completely submerged. And the cat said the world was coming to an end. Then a red cloud came from the sky and ate everything. It ate everything. The world ended. I didn't wake up in a cold sweat or anything, but it did get me thinking. Why do we have dreams like this? What is firing off in our brains to make something like this happen? I am sure there are hundreds of studies on dreams and why we have them, but that's not why we're here today. I went to social media to ask the masses, what is the weirdest dream you've ever had? And I actually got a lot of responses. There were a lot of people who were giving answers. So this is obviously a thing that a lot of people have. So let's hop right into it. Sam from Colorado says, I have a recurring dream where I can fly. Not like a superhero or a plane, but like a hot air balloon. It is very vivid, and honestly, I really enjoy that dream. I've not had it in quite some time. Maybe not weird like you were looking for, but certainly different for me. Well, Sam, thank you for the submission, and I have heard that flying dreams are actually quite common. There is a sort of idea here that people associate flying with freedom. I myself have flying dreams for my own. I usually jump 3 times in the air and then I am flying off like a bird or a flying squirrel or something like that. Now, I don't know about the hot air balloon scenario. Maybe you just really like inflating. I don't know. But good on you for having such a pleasant dream. Lori from Colorado was the next to respond. She said, don't get me started. I have weird drama regularly. And here's the thing. I actually know a little bit about this one, and I use the term know quite lightly. Dreaming about drama is what the brain does to sort of get through scenarios that they're afraid of happening. And I have lots of drama dreams too. I have lots of dreams of friends not disagreeing, of partners not being okay with me, or me not being okay with partners. Drama is just sort of a thing that our brain has to process. And dreams are, as far as I understand it, as far as some studies show, the way that we get through that drama regularly. Bethany on social media says, last night, that's great. You had a dream last night. How convenient. Last night, I dreamed I overheard my partner talk about shopping for wedding rings. This is a common one. Your dreams are your wants and your fears. So, Bethany, maybe you are hoping that your partner wants to ask you to marry them, or maybe your partner is going to ask you to marry them. Maybe they've given you that sort of hint and you are afraid of that. Either way, best of luck, Bethany. Kane Kelly from Colorado says, in response to my question, ever walked the plains of heck? I'm editorializing. They didn't say heck. They said something else. Kane, I have walked the plains in my dreams, and maybe not everybody has, but it is a common dream among people to walk among the torturous and most unpleasant places of their fantasies. It is horrible, but it's also something that we kind of come to terms with as dreamers. We sort of think of the worst things possible. It's part of our psyche. It's something that we do. And so our dreams let us explore that. And I don't know if they were asking, Kane, thank you for the submission. I don't know if they're asking just so that we would ask back, or if it was a straight esoteric question. But yes, we have walked the plains of heck here on the Weird News Podcast, and it's not bad. Our next submission comes from Allie. Allie is quite detailed here, so let me open up this. I had this weird dream that a cow was chasing me, and then I was taunting it because, why not? And I ran up some stairs of a house I regularly deliver to in the area formerly known as the North Side, and latched the gate shut. The cow then proceeds to do a backflip over the fence and slow-mo and Kill Bill style, and then looks me dead in the face and goes, "Game over." And I woke up. Allie, it sounds like you're afraid of cows. I don't know why. Maybe this requires some sort of backstory, but I highly encourage you to follow up on this. I don't know why you're having horrific cow dreams, but I absolutely applaud them. What a weird, scary dream. Cows can be scary until you watch like 2 YouTube videos on them and you realize that they're just big, smart dogs. Tony from social media responds to my question. This is kind of a doozy, but I was in a park I never really had seen before, and there was a German shepherd sitting in front of a tree, not threatening or anything, but I heard a loud scream, and then I woke up screaming. This is an interesting dream. I really love this. There is the idea, it's actually like sort of like a witchy, like black magic sort of idea of the black dog being ominous. So, Tony, I sure hope that things are going well for you, but dreams about black dogs are never positive. Well, maybe they are. I don't know. Maybe something's going to change in your life. Holden from social media says, I have a recurring nightmare of pigs with Valley Girl voices performing surgery on me. Sorry, I have a recurring nightmare of pigs with Valley Girl voices performing surgery on me. That's a terrifying dream, Holden. All that makes me think of is the Twilight Zone episode where there is a girl who's getting surgery done on her, and at the end of the episode, she is very pretty, and she's upset about it. And then it is revealed that all of her surgeons, as well as all of the people on this particular world that this story is taking place, has a pig-like face. So, Holden, I don't know how to interpret your dream. I'm not a dream psychologist, but I would just have to say that maybe you have some issues with your own self-worth, which to that I say, you're beautiful, and keep on keeping on. Joseph from Colorado says, in answer to my question, last night I had a dream I went over to this big cholo's house to get my hair cut. And right before he started, he was like, hold up, I have to go to the bathroom. And then he just put a paper towel on the ground and went to the bathroom on it. Then he got really angry when I didn't want to get my hair cut anymore. Joseph, I don't know how to interpret that dream. Once again, that's not my job, but I feel really bad for you, man. Like, good for you for putting up with that in the dream world. Best of luck. I hope you don't have any more gross dreams like that. Casey from social media has 2 words to my question. He says, and I quote, too many. Yes. We all have weird dreams. We all have weird dreams. The other night I had a dream that I could jump further than any human being, and instead of them loving me for it, they hated me for it. So we all have too many weird dreams, but I would love to hear in detail your weird dreams from you. Caleb from social media says, when I was younger, I dreamt I went to an exotic petting zoo and developed a lifelong terror of monitor lizards. Caleb, did you develop a lifelong terror of monitor lizards? This is kind of important. Like, I would love a follow-up on if you actually love or hate monitor lizards. If this dream is the reason you hate monitor lizards, there has to be a reason. It's something going on in your own head. And I absolutely applaud you for being so open with such a fear. Good on you. I hope you can get over such a terror. Kenyon from social media says, I dreamt I was arguing with Dave, the founder of Wendy's, about why their marketing is garbage. I then proceeded to call his marketing guy a bad word. Then I woke up. Really not sure why it happened, but it's the only dream I've ever remembered. The only dream you've ever remembered, Kenyon. Sorry, give me a moment to laugh at this one. Oh, why would you argue with Dave Thomas, the founder of Wendy's? He is the nicest guy. Like, what? Why are you arguing about their marketing? I'll say this. I have a lot of people in my social media space that are into branding and marketing, and I feel so bad when they're having marketing dreams because it's like, yeah, that's sort of a thing that you think about constantly. And I only wish the best for those people to like keep on keeping on, because like there's just other things to worry about. But why would you have a bad dream about Dave Thomas? He's such a good guy, or was such a good guy. Anyway, in addition to social media, I also looked up certain Reddits and subreddit threads just to get some better answers about what's going on. And there was a super great Ask Reddit thread recently that was, fellow Redditors, what is the weirdest dream that you had that you remember? The top response says, a cat crawled up my butt and got stuck. We've all been there, friend. We've all been there in our dreams. And if you haven't, please let me know on social media, because this seems like a common one. Am I right? I'm right, right? We've all had that cat dream, right? Anyway, the next comment is, once I had a whale come into my house. Maybe it would be better to call it a sky whale or a ghost whale, because it was flying and it could pass through walls. Just a brief visit before it carried on with its day. I love this dream. And here's why. I love whales. I sort of have this little like headcanon going on that maybe whales are not only swimming through the ocean, but they're sort of like spiritually swimming through life. And I just can't help but believe that maybe a real whale was like visiting you in your dreams. So good on you. The next comment says, I was 3 or 4 years old. It was night. I walked to kindergarten and played with some of the kids I had never spoken to. They were loud, and for some reason one of us was scared and trying to quiet everyone. Then, suddenly, a giant sentient banana broke through a trapdoor and ate us whole, one by one. I woke up the instant I died in the dream. That's a terrifying dream. That is ridiculous. I don't know how to respond to a dream like that, especially one with sentient bananas, and I really don't have a good time with things that eat you. I have definitely died in some of my dreams, and I don't like it. It's either woken me up or I've been there for when I was dead, and I really, really, really don't like death dreams. So I am sorry that you had that dream, and I wish you the best of luck. The next comment on the thread says, it was only a couple of days ago, but I was in Walmart, and I was talking to these people who were driving a car, and for some reason, they decided to chase me. So I ran to the back of the store, where I ran a mountain of red rock, which I started climbing. Once I got high enough, I looked down to see them, but since it was super steep, I had to climb. I decided it'd be better to go back down and make a break for the front exit. I vividly remember seeing them close, and I was sure they saw me too, but apparently they didn't, so I hid behind a shelf and watched them slowly drive by, scared and out of my mind. Afterwards, I stealthily made my way to the front, and that's all I remember. All I have to say to this dream is, are you Stephen King? Because that definitely sounds like a Stephen King type dream. That guy has a huge fear of cars. I guess he was hit by a car some 15 years ago, and this was after he wrote things like Christine. But cars have always been scary to him, and honestly, I understand why. Nobody wants to be run down by a car. Our last comment of the day is, I was in my old building in the neighborhood that I grew up in. It was a regular day. Everything moving as it would. Then I remember asking the doorman for a lighter, and after I lit my cigarette and gave him back the lighter, I asked him, where are we? Everything just stopped, and everybody stared daggers at me. When I turned to look at the door, the man was gone, and when I turned back to look at the crowd, they were looking at me with disgust. I woke up not too long after that, and still felt uncomfortable. I love this dream, and here's why. There is a sort of like, I don't want to call it a theory because that's not the right word, but there's sort of a philosophical idea here that when you dream, you sort of go to other realities, other worlds, other sort of versions of yourself. and you experience what other versions of you are doing as yourself, and any way that you can disturb that tends to have a negative effect. So good on you. I hope you have more dreams like that. I hope you discover more about yourself. That's about it today for the GSMC Weird News Podcast. It has been such a pleasure. Thank you for listening to us at the GSMC Weird News Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. I would like to ask that you please remember to subscribe to the show and write a nice review. That really helps us. Also, if you can, please follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Thank you, and have a weird and wonderful week.